Welcome to The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubanim. There is a very intense effort on the part of the international community to calm the escalated violent activities in Gaza, which has led to the death of almost 700 people. More of the casualties on the part of the Palestinians than the Israelis. Despite the growing casualty figure, Israel has continued its military operation against militants in the territory. In the meantime, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says a plan formulated by Egypt will be the framework for any ceasefire. So far, a number of bodies counted have been 600 on the part of the Palestinians and 29 on the part of Israel, who have been killed in the 14 days of the offensive launched by Israel.
With each passing day, the death toll increases. Dozens attended a funeral procession for 7 Palestinians, including 5 children, belonging to one family killed by overnight Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Based on information made available by Gaza health officials, the Palestinian death toll since the beginning of the Israeli offensive has reached 546, including nearly 100 children and many other civilians since the offensive was launched on July the 8th. Israel's casualties also mounted, with the military announcing the deaths of 2 more soldiers, bringing the number of army fatalities to 27. This morning, Israel pounded targets across the Gaza Strip, dashing hopes of a pause in the fighting, as the military said one of its soldiers was missing, presumed dead, following clashes with Hamas Islamists. Both the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who are visiting the region, have voiced alarm at mounting civilian casualties. But Israel insists its reactions are purely retaliatory.
Israel agreed always a ceasefire, but not under conditions that the ceasefire will let the danger open and surprise us whenever they want. So we are for a ceasefire, but a ceasefire that will cease the fire. If there will be this sort of a proposal, I imagine that our government will accept it.
Israel has also made it clear that it would go to all lengths to defend itself.
It's very saddening. To see any of these civilian deaths is terribly saddening. I can tell you that we opened up a hospital, a field hospital, a humanitarian field hospital on the edge of Gaza, and Hamas doesn't let the people come there. They're hiding rockets in hospitals, they're hiding arms in hospitals, they're shooting from hospitals, so they just don't care. I mean, they break every norm in the book, every rule in the book, committing triple war crimes, targeting civilians, hiding behind civilians, piling civilians in places where they'll be put in harm's way. I think to the extent there is any blame, it should be laid squarely to Hamas's door. Well, we've agreed 3 times, as I said, to successive ceasefires, and I think the most important initiative, and really the only initiative, is the Egyptian initiative, supported by the Arab League, supported by the Palestinian Authority, supported by Israel, supported by the UN. If Hamas wants to end this, they could have supported it. I think John Kerry will come here, and I think he should stand behind this initiative. If people want to end it, it could end.
But no matter who started the fight, the results are plain to see. There's no sign of any let-up in the fighting around Gaza, with plumes of black smoke spiraling into the sky and Israeli shells raining down on the coastal Palestinian enclave. Hamas and its allies fired a barrage of rockets into southern and central Israel, triggering sirens in Tel Aviv, with one missile striking a nearby town, lightly injuring 2 people.
Female genital mutilation, also known as female circumcision, is defined by the World Health Organization as all procedures that involve partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. It's a procedure so gory that the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, is pushing for a global end to the act, as well as a forced childhood marriage. While speaking at a global summit in London, the Prime Minister said Britain had no special magic to stop the practices, so global action is needed. Mr. Cameron has also unveiled a range of measures to tackle FGM in the UK. As part of those measures, parents in England and Wales will face prosecution if they fail to stop daughters undergoing FGM. He said the summit was intended to use the power of convening people to come up with ideas and commitments to outlaw these practices. In the meantime, it's been nothing short of a terrible day in Kabul. There's a suicide bomber killed 4 people, including at least 3 foreign security guards, in an attack outside the airport. The Taliban was very swift to claim responsibility, and they disclosed they were targeting a key counter-narcotics building. 4 insurgents also were killed in the process, but there was no word on the nationalities of the foreigners that were killed. The attack comes days after security forces repelled an attack on Kabul airport by the Taliban. In a separate attack today, a roadside bomb injured a civilian close to the Afghan Meteorological Department near the civilian entrance of the airport. And on to an update on the Malaysia plane that crashed in Ukraine, still raising eyebrows across the world. Of course, the train carrying the remains of the victims which crashed has arrived in the city of Kharkiv, outside of rebel territory. Flight MH17, as we remember, last Thursday crashed in an area held by pro-Russia rebels, killing all 298 people on board. In the meantime, it seems there has actually been some manipulation of evidence as purported by the United States and some other countries. Well, the VOA's Al Person joins us now from Kiev with more on this. Al, thanks for joining us on The World Today. What else do we know now about the train carrying the victims, carrying the bodies to Kharkiv?
Than we knew this morning, which is that the train did arrive in Kharkiv from the rebel-held area. It was taken to a remote railroad yard that had not been used in a long time near an abandoned factory, apparently. And there's some sort of facility been set up there to do a preliminary check on the bodies, and also to make sure that nothing dangerous has been included so that they can be put on an aircraft, which has been sent from Holland, that will take them to Amsterdam, where there is a proper forensic identification facility where the remains will be identified and then returned to their families. We don't know when that plane's going to leave, but we do know that everyone wants to get that done as soon as possible.
Well, we understand, Al, that most of the victims, of course, had Dutch nationalities, and the Dutch government, understandably, is in the forefront of pushing for investigations on the crash site. Yesterday, you did tell us that they had restrictions on access to the site, thanks to the pro-Russian rebels who are in the area. But what is the Ukrainian government saying about investigations being conducted there at the site of the crash?
Well, you know, it's actually a very interesting situation, because in Ukraine there is a government organization called the State Emergency Service, and they're the ones who would get involved in any sort of incident like this. And as you might expect, that organization has offices all across the country and employees all across the country who have some level of expertise in how to deal with emergencies. And so even though the rebels are controlling these 2 areas of eastern Ukraine, those people still live there. And I don't know if they normally go to their offices or not, but they are somehow available. And when this plane came down, those people were allowed to go and somehow work on the situation, supervise perhaps some of the volunteers. And they were even allowed at one point to be in touch with their bosses in Kiev to try to get more advice on how to proceed and to coordinate how this would be handled. So there was this sort of bit of coordination between the government in Kiev and the locally based government workers in the region, even though those locally based workers were under the control of the rebels and indeed operating virtually at gunpoint. So they had access to the site at a certain point. We don't know exactly when, but there were also a lot of other people on the site. And by the way, it's more than one location. at least 3 main locations and many, many other locations where debris came down. So there were, for example, coal miners who were brought out there to help carry the body